Welcome to lesson 1.9. Today we're going to talk about density. Density is a very important physical property of matter. Density is defined as mass divided by volume. A lot of times density is used as an identification tag for substances, so we can determine what the substance is based off of its density. So in this example, a chemist is trying to identify an unknown liquid. The chemist knows they have exactly 25.00 cubic centimeters or 25 milliliters of the substance. The mass of that volume of material is 19.625, and that's at 20 degrees Celsius, because a lot of liquids will have, they can change their volume slightly at different temperatures. So we have a standard of measuring densities at 20 degrees Celsius. So let's look. The problem goes on. It gives you five different examples of what the compound could be. Notice here, obviously, if it's chloroform, it's going to be very different. Notice if it's these two, you may have a hard time distinguishing these based off density, and then hopefully you can distinguish at least these two from these, because there's a difference. So which of these compounds is most likely to be the unknown liquid? So where are we going? We're going to calculate the density. What do we know? We know the mass and the given volume. How do we get there? We determine the density. So density, mass divided by volume. Mass was given in the problem. Volume was given in the problem. This is a division problem. So you look at the number of significant figures. So 5 up here, 4 up here. So the answer is truncated to the lower number, which is 4. The density of this compound corresponds exactly to that of isopropyl alcohol, so that's the guess we would make. But if we needed to maybe take this to a court of law or something like that, we would do more testing to determine if it was indeed ethanol. This table shows you the density of a lot of different substances, and one of the common sense things we look at a lot of times with density is, what happens if we put something in water? Will it sink or will it float? So if you notice on here, these densities are 20 degrees Celsius and 1 atmosphere pressure. We generally say that water has a density of about 1 gram per cubic centimeter. Here it's just slightly lower. Anything that has a lower density means it will float. Anything that has a greater density will sink. And so all of these things on this chart up above are going to float. In fact, these two, the two liquids, will sit on top of the water. The oxygen and the hydrogen, if they were in the water, they will actually bubble out of the water. And that's why hydrogen balloon, notice the density here is much less dense than air, and so hydrogen will actually float up, and just like a hydrogen balloon floats up. Magnesium and all these other things, they will actually sink in the water. And please note that mercury is a liquid, and this mercury liquid will actually sink to the bottom of the beaker that you have the water in. So let's look at this example, and there's a couple of things that we want to look at specifically. We have a 25-gram cylinder of iron, and we have a 1-gram pellet of copper. So our cylinder of iron is about 25 times as massive as our little piece of copper. We put those in 500 milliliters of water, and we're going to predict whether they float or sink. Well, in order to determine float or sink, you're not looking at the mass of the object itself, you're looking at the density, because the mass does not determine whether it floats or sinks. The density is what determines that. Both of these are much higher than the density of water, so they're both going to sink. So the iron and copper will sink. So don't let the fact that this mass is much greater than this mass throw you off, because when you're talking about floating or sinking, it doesn't matter how much you have. It matters what the density is. So this actually completes our lesson on density. Next time, when we go to lesson 1.10, we're going to talk about the different types of matter.